Okay, now we're live.
You recorded twice this time, Ashley?
The first one was to the computer. We got to get it to the cloud. So
if you would do a roll call, please.
sure thing. Chair Tom Farrell,
Here.
Ronald Hasso,
Here.
David Smith,
Present.
Brian Clinton,
Here.
and Brooke Brown.
Here.
That is all we have for the strike force. We also have Patty Hickson with Bowie and Company.
Right. Do we have any public comments on items that are not on our agenda today? And if you just raise your hand, and Ashley, if you'll explain to everybody how to raise their hand.
Sure, if you are on a computer or tablet, it should be down near the participants area of your screen. You can click to raise your hand. I don't think we have anybody calling in right now, but it is *9 to raise your hand if you do call in on a phone.
Right. And again, as we go through this, if any of our people that are on the call that are not on the committee wish to have a comment, please feel free to join in on that. And item number 2 is our minutes, which I'm going to table since I haven't read them. And Patty and Ashley promised not to fuss at me. So I guess I can get away with that. So item number 3 is a presentation, discussion, and possible action on the residential and commercial survey results and proposed mission and vision statement. And Patty, I'm gonna let you just start going through this. And again, if there's a question or a comment as we go through any of this, please feel free to just raise your hand and we'll call on you, and we'll see how we can get through this. So Patty?
And it looks like I do not have screen sharing enabled. Ashley, is that something you can enable quickly?
Yes.
Thank you. And as Ashley does that, again, just for folks who may not know me, just wanted to again introduce myself. I am Patty Hickson from Bowie and Company. My team has been working with the city on a number of initiatives, but we were also brought in by Tom to support the strike force related to the just overseeing the residential survey about the comprehensive plan, which we helped set up and distribute through SurveyMonkey. And then we went through and analyzed all the results. And so what you see here today is the high level analysis of that data, which was certainly really, just a great amount of input from residents throughout the city of Rollingwood. So again, feel free to stop me or maybe just call out if you need me to pause anywhere. I will try to pause after each slide so that there is time for questions or comments. But as mentioned, this survey was something that was actually drafted by the strike force here. And it went out to all City of Rollingwood residents age 18 and older. It was pushed out over kind of late April, early May. There were a total of 378 responses received. You'll see as we work through the data that a number of the survey questions were designed to be quantitative, but there were also several open-ended responses that our team at Bowie and Company analyzed for trends. So just in terms of kind of quick level characteristics of survey respondents, the majority of respondents do own a home in Rollingwood, with only a small percentage being those who rent within the city. There was really a good representation kind of across the board for how long those who took the survey have lived in Rollingwood, as you can see there in the middle of the screen. And then in terms of the age of the respondents, we saw really a good cross-section of folks, with the primary age group represented in the 45 to 54-year-old age range. In terms of annual household income, again, we saw kind of a variety of responses. For those who chose to respond, I should call out that for all of these questions, folks did have the option not to respond. So this is not exhaustive of every respondent that we did see. And then there was also a map provided to indicate in which area of Rollingwood those who responded did live in. So you can see here the map at the bottom of the screen with zones 1, 2, 3, and 4, with area 2 and area 3 followed by area 4 as the top response areas. In terms of the character of the city of Rollingwood, this was an open-ended question for the most part, but we essentially the Strike Force survey did ask folks, what do you value most about the city of Rollingwood? What is your highest priority for the future? In terms of all of the open-ended responses that we analyzed, we really saw that respondents emphasize the community, the close-knit feel, the fact that it feels like a small town, the fact that it is a safe place to live and work, and to be able to go out and to walk around and enjoy time with your neighbors. Many folks commented on the beautiful trees that Rollingwood is so well known for. Again, green space was another theme that we heard throughout the responses, specifically Rollingwood Park being an asset for the community. And then we also heard several responses call out just the single family home kind of makeup of the city as it stands today and the family friendly nature of the neighborhoods. In terms of community satisfaction, one of the questions asked, what do you dislike the most about Rollingwood? What would you most like to see changed as you consider the future of the city? So trends that we saw from this, many people talked about the fact that, with new development coming in, new homes being built, several of those are very large homes that felt out of proportion to the lot size. Other responses talked significantly about the cut-through traffic of Rollingwood, given its position near downtown Austin, near Zilker Park, and then through to Westlake and other areas of the surrounding region. There were also several responses that mentioned stormwater and other drainage issues within the city. And tied to that, many people talked about aging infrastructure, the reliability of utilities, and other folks talked about their desire to see improved walkability throughout the city, whether that included sidewalks or trails or specifically street lighting. And then there was also, a number of comments that we saw, many people mentioning the loss of trees, whether that was due to new development or otherwise. And so wanting to preserve the trees that make, again, Rollingwood so unique. There were also responses related to, what are the concerns when it comes to Rollingwood's future? What issues or challenges would you like the city to prioritize? Themes that we heard were drainage, concern about increased taxes in general, just cost of living within the city limits, new home construction and unmanaged growth. Differing opinions, to be quite honest, along those lines, but that folks were, concerned about the development process perhaps not regulating enough, and others who didn't want to see it regulate anymore in terms of lot size, setbacks, things of that nature. But there was also a trend around respondents indicating that they don't want to see Rollingwood move to include many multifamily housing options. They want to keep that single family character that we mentioned earlier. In terms of what would make Rollingwood better, what facilities, programs, or attributes would respondents like the city to prioritize? Again, kind of clear themes throughout the survey. Folks emphasized infrastructure improvements, maintaining or adding to the trees and green space that exists today. And they also, indicated a number of responses indicated a desire to see more shared use paths, sidewalks, bike lanes, trails, so more connection points and multimodal transportation options, as well as community amenities, including a public pool and, again, more green space. There was a section of questions related to City Hall and whether or not respondents would like to see City Hall improved, and if so, how would they like to see it improved? In general, we saw a split across responses for whether folks would prefer that City Hall be torn down and constructed as a new building, or renovated entirely, or leaving City Hall as is. So there was really kind of a mix across responses there. And then in terms of when, if at all, folks would like to see any type of improvements, generally speaking, those who did want to see any change, The majority said within 5 years, but then there was also a strong second group that said never, leave it as is. So again, mixed responses in terms of what to do with City Hall. The next section of questions really focused on drainage and stormwater management. So there was again an open-ended question asking residents their thoughts on stormwater management and drainage in Rollingwood. We saw from the responses that we analyzed, there was a mix of concerns about drainage from some, and others felt that there was no problem at all. So it really was a pretty stark contrast, almost an equal split based on what we read in terms of those who thought that it was a serious problem and others who felt like nothing needed to change. But specifically within those responses, folks talked about development, and again, that proportion of home size to lot size, concerns about impervious cover, concerns about code enforcement, and then also just comments about necessary maintenance being kept up to date, and then wanting to be thoughtful about future development and if fees could be assessed for new development to pay for any infrastructure updates that might need to be made. And so moving into this next set of questions, there were a number of questions that were designed to essentially ask how much do you support or oppose the following options that are being considered in terms of projects related to drainage and stormwater. And so related to pursuing all stormwater runoff projects identified in the infrastructure improvement plan, the majority of responses show that they somewhat support pursuing those, and then strongly support as the second largest response rate for that question. In terms of pursuing identified stormwater runoff projects that address significant risk to public health and safety, but not those that do not pose a significant risk, there was again an overwhelming kind of a split between somewhat support and strongly support for that option. And then moving into parks and recreation, again, open-ended question to residents to respond as to what they thought about the parks and recreation in Rollingwood. Again, many people called out that this is the crown jewel of Rollingwood, the green space, the parks, the trees. Many indicated a desire to improve or add to what exists today by expanding the green spaces, adding trails and other public amenities. One of the things that we did see as really a split among responses was the desire to either establish a separate dog park or keep things as they are today. And there were also really a mix of responses in terms of those who like the current use of the parks and the Little League usage of the current facilities versus those who indicated a desire to see other activities utilizing those spaces. Again, kind of going into the same structure that we talked about before with the next set of questions reflecting how whether respondents strongly oppose or strongly support or fall somewhere in between for the following options. In terms of providing additional shade through tree planting, most respondents either strongly support or somewhat support doing so. In terms of improving existing hiking or walking trails and sidewalks, the majority of respondents either strongly support or somewhat support doing so. And then expanding hiking or walking trails and sidewalks, the majority of respondents either strongly support or somewhat support doing so. And then establishing a dedicated dog park separate from the existing sports fields. There was a strongly oppose was the majority response here, but there was a good mix of responses indicating strongly supporting or somewhat supporting. So again, a pretty clear split between responses in that area. And then in terms of conducting a study to determine the feasibility and costs of a sidewalk or trail along the south side of Dry Creek, the majority of respondents, just a slight majority, strongly opposed doing so, with the next largest segment of responses somewhat supporting doing so. And then the third chart here on this slide is whether respondents support conducting a study to determine the feasibility and costs of a hiking trail along Old Delana Lane. And the majority of responses strongly opposed, but just very, very slight majority over strong, somewhat supporting, and then strongly supporting. So again, kind of a mixed bag of responses in these different areas. And then moving into the next set of questions, which was related to project funding and prioritization in terms of using new revenue made available by increases in market valuations of new and existing rolling wood properties without raising the property tax rate. There was the majority indicated that they strongly support doing so, with the next largest segment of respondents somewhat supporting doing so. In terms of focusing on increasing revenues from sales tax and commercial property tax, the majority of responses somewhat support doing so. And then the next largest group of responses strongly support doing so. And then the final chart on this slide, whether or not respondents support seeking third-party sources of funding, such as state, federal grants, if available. The majority of responses, clear majority, did strongly support doing so. In terms of using long-term bonds that require the approval of a majority of voters, paid for through an increase to the rolling wood property tax rate, the majority of a small majority of respondents strongly oppose, with the next largest segment of respondents somewhat supporting that next step. In terms of using short-term tax notes that do not require the approval of voters, the majority of respondents strongly opposed that. And then the use of combination of these sources was really a true mix of responses there, but the slight majority was was somewhat support followed by neutral. And then in terms of respondents' interest in not funding these projects through additional taxation, the majority selected that they strongly support not funding these projects through additional taxation. And then related to the City of Rolling Wood's portion of each resident's property tax bill, and what amount, if any, would respondents support the City of Rolling Wood's portion of property taxes increasing? The majority said none, followed by less than 4% as the second most responses that we saw in that area. And then of all of the different categories of projects in terms of respondents' interest in prioritizing those drainage and stormwater projects were overall the #1 priority for respondents, coming in with 51% of survey responses showing that as their #1 priority, followed by Parks and Recreation, and then in third as priority, the City Hall renovation or rebuilding. And then moving into the section of questions related to the Bee Caves commercial corridor, residents were asked to share their preferences related to the corridor and what type of development and uses that they would like to see. In general, folks showed that they really strongly supported new options in terms of restaurants and retail, but opposition to uses such as a hotel or additional housing. There was, again, a strong desire from respondents in terms of maintaining a low density single family character of Rolling Wood, and increased traffic and crime were some of the primary concerns that we saw through the responses that were received. So you can see, again, kind of moving into that same structure of question related to strongly support, strongly oppose, or falling somewhere in between. Related to improving aesthetics of existing buildings and uses, the majority of responses, it was actually a very, very close split, but a slight majority was strongly support, followed by somewhat support or neutral. In terms of encouraging additional retail vendors, the majority of respondents did strongly support that, followed by somewhat support. In terms of encouraging additional restaurants or bars, the majority of respondents strongly supported or somewhat supported that measure. In terms of encouraging a hotel space, the majority of respondents strongly opposed a hotel space. In terms of encouraging additional professional services, the majority somewhat supported that, followed by a neutral response. And then in terms of encouraging additional beauty, health, or cosmetic services, the majority of respondents were neutral. In terms of encouraging additional housing options, such as apartments, condos, or other non-single family residences, the majority of respondents strongly opposed. In terms of encouraging additional daily services and necessities, gasoline, automotive, dry cleaners, grocery stores, convenience stores, or pharmacies, there was again kind of a mix here with a slight majority for somewhat supporting doing so, followed by neutral, and then closely behind that was strongly opposing. So again, kind of a mix across the responses that were received. And then finally in this category, adding recreational spaces such as trails or walkways to restaurants and bars, the majority of responses strongly supported or somewhat supported doing so. And related to the potential goals for the Bee Cave corridor, respondents were asked to prioritize the following options. And their number one priority was maintaining a low density single family character, coming in at 56%, ranking that as their first priority, followed by protecting property values and or views of existing Rollingwood residences in second. Third, increasing sales tax revenue, and fourth, increasing retail and restaurant options, and fifth, maintaining current traffic levels in terms of, again, respondents' priorities for these options. And then moving into what kind of retail businesses, if any, would respondents like to see in the Bee Cave Road area? The majority of responses indicated either restaurants or small boutiques and other retail options. In terms of apartment complexes, the majority of respondents strongly opposed seeing that type of use. Similarly, respondents indicated that they strongly opposed bringing in condominium complexes. Similarly, we saw strong opposition from responses related to senior housing as an option for the Bee Cave corridor. And then office space was more of a mixed set of responses with the majority, a small majority of folks strongly opposing, followed by neutral in terms of the responses that were received. And then for mixed use buildings, the majority of responses indicated a strong opposition, followed by a somewhat supporting or neutral. Related to traffic, there were a number of questions in terms of concern or lack of concern related to the following items. So in terms of increased traffic congestion on Bee Cave Road, the majority of responses indicated that they were very concerned or concerned as it related to traffic congestion. In terms of increased traffic congestion within Rollingwood residential areas, the majority of respondents indicated that they were very concerned or concerned. In terms of lowering the speed limit on Bee Cave Road, the majority of responses provided a neutral response there compared to strongly opposing as the second option in that particular question. Related to the roads and a couple of contemplated projects, there is a joint project with TxDOT and Rollingwood to address Bee Cave low water crossing, and the majority of respondents indicated that they somewhat support that project, followed by strong support for that project. And there has also been a contemplation of reversible lanes on Bee Cave Road, and the majority of responses indicated that they strongly oppose reversible lanes on Bee Cave Road, followed by a neutral response. In terms of how respondents feel about the use of a limited tax incentive to new retail establishments to encourage retail businesses to locate in Rollingwood's commercial corridor, a small majority of respondents indicated that they strongly oppose that, followed by a somewhat support or neutral. And then in terms of encouraging new development to move closer to Bee Cave and further from Rollingwood residential areas by increasing the setbacks between commercial and residential areas and decreasing the setbacks between commercial buildings and the roadway, the majority of respondents somewhat support or were neutral on that option. When asked about Rollingwood's codes and ordinances, in terms of thoughts related to the residential areas of Rollingwood and what respondents would like and what they would like to change, the majority of residents indicated their desire, again, to preserve the residential single-family character, specifically with better development regulations that limit impervious cover, that enforce appropriate setbacks, and that also protect the trees that the city is so well known for. There was also, again, a desire expressed by respondents showing that residents want to see more sidewalks and additional traffic calming measures, as well as speed enforcement to improve walkability and safety within the city. Again, going back to that question structure of oppose versus support, in terms of an ordinance prohibiting the combining of residential lots for the building of larger homes, sometimes called estate lots, a small majority of respondents strongly support, followed by the next largest segment of respondents indicated a strong opposition for that. So again, mixed responses there. In terms of an ordinance regulating setbacks and other issues posed by the combining of residential lots, the majority of respondents indicated that they strongly support that or somewhat support that. In terms of an ordinance allowing the subdivision of residential lots for the building of more smaller homes, the majority of respondents indicated that they strongly oppose that. In terms of an ordinance making it more difficult to upzone property in the future, the majority of respondents indicated that they strongly support that or somewhat support that. For an ordinance allowing accessory dwelling units or granny flats on single family zoned residential lots, the majority of responses, again, it was a closer mix here, but the majority was to somewhat support that, followed by strongly support and strongly oppose, almost equally split. And then an ordinance allowing short-term rentals, the majority of respondents strongly oppose that. In terms of traffic and safety within the Bee Cave commercial corridor, related to lowering the current speed limit, there was again a mix of responses here, a very small majority in terms of the split, but strongly opposed was the slight majority, followed by neutral. In terms of adding speed bumps or other traffic calming measures, there was a majority of for those strongly opposed to that. And then in terms of adding a dedicated crosswalk across Rollingwood Drive near the park, the majority of respondents strongly support or somewhat support that option. And in terms of conducting a residential traffic study to consider implementation of traffic calming devices, the majority of responses, a small majority, was to strongly oppose that, followed by strongly supporting that measure. And I'll pause there before I talk about the vision and mission and just see if there are any questions about the data itself.
Great. If anybody has a question, just raise your hand and we'll make sure you get called on. If I can see everybody. Ashley, do you see anybody?
Mo Goyle has his hands raised.
Mo?
Hi, do you have the data summarized where you have, I know I can do it just by looking at the slides, you have where you have the strongly, where you have all the positives and all the negatives added up? So meaning a graph where it's strongly opposed and somewhat opposed, and then those would be combined, and then strongly support and somewhat support would be combined, and then you'd have the neutral. So it'd be 3.
Yes, that's not something that we have compiled currently, but certainly something that we could pull together.
Okay, that's my only question.
You bet.
Any other questions to anybody on our strike force or any of our residents that are watching? Please feel free to jump in if you'd like. Okay.
All right.
Not seeing any hands.
Okay, well, again, after analyzing all of that data, again, taking into consideration all of the feedback that respondents shared, especially through those open-ended questions, the Bowie and Company team has drafted a recommended vision and mission specific to the comprehensive plan, which we'll share here. And so specifically, just to kind of set the framework, the vision for a comprehensive plan is the calling for the city of Rollingwood. It's why this comprehensive plan is being developed. It is your desired future position for the city of Rollingwood. And so again, based on what we heard from community input, we recommend the vision to be to preserve Rollingwood's vibrant community, neighborly character, natural resources, and high quality of life for current residents and future generations.
And let's pause right there for a second, just to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to comment on that. And do we have anybody that'd like to make a comment? David, did I see your hand?
I think I see a hand from Brooke.
Oh,
Yes,
Brooke.
Brown has her hand raised.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, this is Brooke. First, I think y'all have done a great job, Patty, on pulling all this information together and categorizing it and drafting the vision and mission statements. My only suggestion on vision is maybe to add one word between vibrant and community to add family oriented. As I thought about vibrant community, does that mean real busy, lots going on? What does that mean? What is really, what's vibrant about this community? And that would be my suggestion there, to add family oriented, to give another adjective there.
That's great feedback. Any other thoughts or questions related to that or other pieces of the vision?
And I think the survey results would warrant that, Brooke.
That's what, yeah, that's what I, after thinking, does this include everything that we would want it to include?
Absolutely. And there were a number of responses, of course, that indicated just, the love of, again, the community feel, but folks feeling like they can walk around, talk to their neighbors, take their kids out to the park, as well as other activities for all ages. So I do think that family-oriented nature does fit well based on what we saw from the responses.
Great. Thank you, Brooke.
Tom?
Yes, Ryan.
No, I just want to say thank you also, Patty. I thought you guys did a great job of summarizing the information for us. And I think it's a collective sigh of relief of this just being much more spot on, I think, to what our community wants than previous circulated drafts. So thank you.
Great. Any other comments?
I have a comment, Tom, on the mission statement, if we're at that point.
I think she's
Present it.
moving on to that next.
Sure, I'll dive into that and just, again, to orient everyone, how we consider a mission when we think about drafting something like this is what the city will offer and how. So the vision is the why and the mission is the what and the how. It is your objective and your approach. And so the suggested mission that we have drafted here is that the City of Rollingwood will ensure the long-term sustainability of our community through fiscal responsibility, environmental stewardship, thoughtful growth, and excellent city services.
Brooke?
I had one comment here, and that is in one of the early parts of the survey, I think it's either question 2 or 3, I don't remember exactly which one. It's the question about what do you dislike most? And there was some concern about the transparency of City Hall and some concern about the governance. And so my thought on mission would be to add something like intentional community-driven governance, maybe after thoughtful growth, comma, intentional community-driven governance and excellent city services. And somewhere, including, I think overall, the survey shows people in Rollingwood appreciate that our city government is tasked with managing all of these priorities in somewhat difficult way. And I think we ought to include some direction as to governance in the mission statement, since that's what drives these decisions. So
Brooke, would communication, is that what we're really, I thought about that too. And I thought communication would be, communicate between better community, or not better, but just communication between our city governance and our citizens.
yes, That's the thought.
Yeah,
I think we're parallel in the thought.
And I think just to chime in, if that's the desire of the strike force, certainly our team can do a little bit of wordsmithing and present some options there. But I do think that this idea around kind of tying in governance along with the city services, so staff versus those who might be elected or in a volunteer position, we could certainly pull that in.
Right.
okay,
We
Thank-
all have responsibility for that.
yes. Every citizen, elected or not.
Yes.
And it looks like Ryan has his hand up.
Ryan?
Yeah, I think, yeah, something like citizen-led or citizen-driven, I think is what I understood Brooke was going for, and maybe transparent somewhere in there also. I actually had, hoping Brooke is still paying attention, because to me, the word thoughtful was as ambiguous as the word vibrant in the previous statement, and everyone could disagree with what thoughtful growth is. Brooke, do you have any suggestions on how? I mean, I don't want to say limited, because that in and of itself may be more too limiting, but it does seem like we want a planned modest growth. But thoughtful was just a little bit too ambiguous for me.
What if we, Ryan, what if it was like thoughtful managed growth? Again, that may be too ambiguous too, but that's what we're,
Brooke, you had great ideas on the last one. Do you have any ideas on that one?
What
Working on,
about measured growth?
I didn't hear that comment. I'm sorry.
What about measured growth?
I think
It's
that'd be,
It
thoughtful.
would be a variation on thoughtful, and yet it would still be measured implies consideration.
Yeah,
well, we might
That's
even,
my suggestion anyway.
thank you, Diana. We might even use the word, you know, considered growth, but I'm not
I like
sure.
Diana's suggestion. I'd probably change thoughtful and add measured.
Okay. Any other comments on that?
Yeah, this is this is Mo. Along those lines, I think the term fiscal responsibility can mean a lot of things to different people. You know, I mean, so, and maybe that's the point. It can mean what people want it to mean when they read it, but I don't think it's saying anything direct.
And I do think that's actually a great point. One of the things that we always like to consider, particularly with a comprehensive plan that will guide a city for decades to come, is allowing some flexibility, knowing that your circumstances today may be drastically different from what it may be 5-10 years down the road. But we do want to be thoughtful that we're not so ambiguous that folks feel like there's too much freedom. So I do think that that's a great point, and curious to hear if there's any other thoughts along those lines.
Any other comments on that?
I don't mind fiscal responsibility. I agree that there seem, at least in the nationally, there could be baggage that comes along with those words, but to me, it just means making sure you can pay for the things that you spend. I would assume that most people agree with that, you know, rather than being reckless or taking great risks. So, and I assume that's what you meant, Patty, with that. So if there's a better way to describe, you know, that whatever that's best called, I'd be fine with that. But that's the way I read it, was just, you know, making sure that we're not taking too many risks and being paying for the things that we having the money to write the checks for the things that we want.
Yes.
One of the things that I saw recurring in the answers we got was the lack of enthusiasm on paying more taxes, which of course none of us was surprised by that. But you know, you have to do that there's no money fairy that comes in and gives us bags of money. So you do have to do that with the through being fiscally responsible. And I definitely think that it needs to be somewhat flexible, because that the sources of income that we have coming in the city will change, and our needs are going to stay at least where they are, if not greater. So we have to figure out, that's the chore of the city council, to figure out how to weigh those two options as to what we get in and what we pay out. So we have to put, I really want to make sure we have something in there about being fiscally responsible as we go forward. Whether that's the correct wording, I don't know, but that's the thought process I think we'll go through. Any thoughts on that?
You could, I mean, and perhaps the synonym is careful financial planning or something like that, but I think that's what you were, as my understanding, I understood that's what you were going for, is that we're going to be safe financially. And I do think that the survey results indicate that people want a modest government.
Well, and I now that you say careful financial planning, Ryan, I think I like that, because fiscal responsibility does sometimes carry some baggage, but careful financial planning seems perhaps more definitive and more balanced, more without a baggage.
I can live with that. I think that gets us where we want to be. Whether you use the term fiscal responsibility or careful financial planning, I think it gets us where we want to be on that. And you're right, there are some negative connotations about being fiscally responsible. Depends on who you talk to. Mo, you brought this up. Is that would that work for you?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Good. Okay, Patty. Any other comments?
I was just going to say, it sounds like there's been very clear feedback from the group. What I heard, just to recap and make sure I heard correctly, on the vision, we'd like to add to say preserve Rolling Woods vibrant, family-oriented community. So adding that clarification to the vision. And then for the mission, to update that to say, to ensure the long-term sustainability of our community through careful financial planning, environmental stewardship, measured growth, and excellent city services. And then our team can work on some language related to incorporating governance and transparency to round that out. Is that correct? Or is there anything else that you all would like our team to consider as we present and refine and present a second draft?
Diana?
Just something that's a particular example when we talk about fiscal responsibility and such. I think you would find donors more willing to donate money to certain events if they know that it's going to a specific need, to a specific subject, to a specific topic, and to a specific problem, and not to a, forgive me for lack of a better term, war chest to be used at the discretion of.
And I think that part that we talked about on governmental transparency and governmental communication I would hope that would cover that from a governance standpoint. Diana.
All right.
But to me, it would.
Hey, Tom, this is Meredith.
Yeah. Hey, Meredith.
Hi. Double check me on this, but I think we need to look into the definition containing like a family oriented as part of the terminology, because I believe that family status is a protected class, and to say family oriented is insinuating discrepancy against people who don't have, who are not in a traditional family. And again, double check me on that. I just know in MLS listings, you're not allowed to list that as a characteristic of the neighborhood.
Yeah, and I'll echo that. And Yeah, I think we want to make sure we're not discriminating against people who are single, or people who may be, yeah, in a non-traditional partnership or other relationship.
Okay. Patty?
Thing I was actually going to note, it sounded like that family-oriented addition came from really the concern that vibrant was a little too ambiguous for the group. And so perhaps instead of adding family-oriented, our team can work on some other modifiers to describe the community without using the word vibrant as an alternative.
I mean, I think neighborly character kind of, for me, kind of, I mean, because I get what we're trying to capture there, and it's kind of that, family friendly sense of community, kind of, almost like a small town kind of feel. So I get where you're going. I kind of share Meredith's kind of, discomfort with, or actually kind of, we don't want to discriminate against people who might be single at any point in their lives, or may not necessarily be part of a family per se.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and I know, Meredith, this is not the MLS deal, but I count a single person as a family, regardless. But that may not be the proper term for what they, how the legality of that is, but that's the way I would kind of look at it. But Meredith, I mean, Patty, let's work on some options for that, because I think Meredith and David brought up a good point. We don't want to make a stark something. We don't want to step in something we don't want to step in. So
Absolutely. I saw Mo raised his hand as well. So certainly welcome additional feedback.
Yeah, my last comment is on, do we really feel the citizens want excellent city services? Typically excellent costs more than great, great costs more than good, good costs more than average, average costs more than poor. So I'm not sure if the feedback I took from the survey is the city wants that the residents want excellent city services. That's just my comment.
I think it's a great point, and certainly welcome it for discussion. One thing I'll note that what really drove that for our team as we were developing the statement was really the kind of continued comment of around better maintenance and preservation of existing assets within the community, which in our minds requires excellent city services and just ensuring that what exists today is maintained. But that being said, certainly welcome it for comment to the group if you prefer that we take that in a different direction.
Hey, Mo, what about effective?
I think effective speaks more to what I saw from the survey results than necessarily excellent. Again, I don't know if we're debating minuet here, but we are having this meeting.
Yeah.
Words matter. No, we certainly appreciate it, and we want to make sure that this reflects your committee's intentions. But again, this is a document that will guide the city for decades to come. So it is important that the words really reflect the intention.
I will tell you, I think that while there is a payment deal, and Mo, you make a good point about excellent is a higher dollar deal. My personal feeling is that that our citizens do want excellent service. Now, whether they want to pay for it or not is a different matter, but they certainly want excellent
That's what they
service.
want. Yes.
And
No, we discovered, Tom, that they do not in fact want to pay for it. That's what we learned from the
and that comes as no surprise to any of us on that. But I do think that and I read this to be that people want to get the best bang for their buck on city services on that. And I think I'm not sure I would not that I wouldn't go with excellent services, but Patty, we can work on some wordsmithing about how we do that, because I think Mo makes a good point. And am I asking people from a mission statement to agree that that we're going to be paying for a higher level of service than we currently get?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I will offer the observation that, you know, I think consistently and comparatively, you know, comparing, you know, I lived in the city of Austin for a long time, and, you know, our city services, I think are, you know, far and above kind of what city of Austin's are, especially when you consider, you know, we have twice a week trash, you know, storm response, you know, picking up bulk collection, you know, our water system's good, wastewater system's good. You know, I'm not, you know, I'm not afraid of using the term excellent, although I absolutely get Mo's point, but I think in Rollingwood, we're already accustomed to, maybe we're a little bit spoiled, having excellent city services.
Yeah, and in line with that, part of the excellent services that I think we get as citizens is that we have the ability to communicate with our city council, and they're our neighbors, and we know them all. So that's just part of it from my standpoint. Um,
Well, and Tom, along those lines, and you've been in the water business, you know, for a long time, but, you know, TCEQ has, like, you know, the superior water system classification, everything else. And, you know, I would advise against using that word as a term of art on a lot of different levels. But I mean, it kind of gets into, I mean, we're really in terms of, you know, the way other cities are managed and the services available to other cities. I mean, we're in the excellent category already. And I think you would have a lot of people with a lot of heartburn if we started walking back from that, just as a matter of course.
yeah. See, I think we do get excellent services from our city, you know, but that's, and I had to deal with a lot of other cities, and I can tell you, comparatively, we are unique. So, Mo, is there anything that any other comments on that that we might do that would make that work for you? Excellent.
I have a thought. We could always say continued.
No, I think I'm fine with it as is. I just wanted to make sure that I just wanted to bring it up as a point of discussion, and you know, since we have the strike force assembled, and see what everyone thought. I'm not opposed to it per se, but I just wanted to make sure we noted it before we not just rubber stamped it.
Yeah,
I think it's a really good point.
yeah, excellent.
And I see effective as also having a value inherent in the quality of being effective. So I kind of like it too. I like it a lot.
So, Brooke, how would your wording go on that?
Well, I would be happy with either excellent or effective. If I were, what I'm thinking in my mind is, if we had a survey question that says, would you prefer your city services to be good, better, excellent, or effective? You'd probably get a higher percentage on effective than excellent. But I do think effective includes the notion that it's both, it works and it's value driven. So I can go with either one.
Well, what if we put both of them, effective, efficient city services?
Or effective and value driven.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that too.
Or we let Patty ponder it for a bit.
I was going to say, if the strike force is open to it, you know, there are a couple of other tweaks related to the governance piece that we'll want to present to you as a follow-up to this conversation anyway. So we can certainly give you a couple of options related to how we describe city services when we do that as well.
Okay, let's do that, and then we'll pick that up. Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome. Any other questions or anything else before I close my portion of the presentation?
Well, this is Diana. I'd like to do a back step to the one that came just before this, regard to the vibrant character. How about some variation of neighborly neighbors and personal friends. That being a little more intimate, a little more personal than just neighborly, and a little more personal than neighborly and friends, but neighborly and personal friends, neighbors and personal friends. Anyway, that would be a suggestion.
Thank you, Dinah.
You know, along those lines, you could change vibrant to friendly community and include friendly community, neighborly character, but that's just a suggestion as well.
I like that, Ronald.
I do
I
too.
think friendly is a protected class that discriminates against all the curmudgeons.
We do have a few.
I don't know. Tom may have objected if he felt.
About
you
to
know,
say,
Yeah, I
I'm not
know.
sure if I
Y'all are picking
should
on me
specifically
now.
pick on Tom or not.
No, I like, Ron, I like friendly in there. If I had to pick something that I picked out of this and what I believe our city represents, it is friendly, neighborly city.
A
And it's
friendly neighborly community.
community. Yeah, that's a good one too.
I think you could just change vibrant with friendly. So it's preserve rolling woods, friendly community, neighborly character, natural resources, and high quality of life.
I like it.
Yep.
Looks good to me.
I like that also. I think that covers it. Okay, Patty.
Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate the fantastic input and feedback today. You just made our job very easy in terms of the vision. So thank you for that. But we will come back to this group with some recommendations on an updated mission. So we'll share that shortly.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Patty while we've got her?
Thank you very much.
Greatly appreciate you, Patty.
I thought that was excellent. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. And
All right. Thank you, everyone.
just so everybody knows, I'm Patty and Pegasus and I have a meeting on Thursday, I believe, and talk about how to continue with the technical part and the writing part of the plan. Everybody's willing to join that if they would like. And Ashley, if you would let everybody know that, send that out to them, I appreciate it. So we can, if anybody wants to join that, they feel free to do so. Don't have to, but if you'd like to, we could. And it's more of just this is a nuts and bolts deal of how we put the plan together as we go forward on that. So, Patty, thank you again. And I'll tell you, it's a pleasure working with you.
Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate you having me, and we will follow up with you soon.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Any other thoughts about the? I'll have to ask this as we went through the survey. I really appreciate putting the little charts in with the questions. That was a lot easier for me to follow. Were there any surprises that anyone had on the survey results? Because I had a couple that I was kind of looking at.
I think I was pretty surprised that some people said we have no drainage issues. I know that there's some that don't affect everyone, but I mean, they're clearly there, but you know, the city's working on them, and
yeah,
that surprised me.
I think it's all a matter of perspective.
That's true.
It is. I was somewhat surprised about the on several of these answers we got that was regarding that was somewhat. I thought I was surprised about some of them that there weren't more more support on. Frankly, there was a couple that I was just. I thought we would have a lot larger support on that than we had, even though it was a majority in each case on that. And Mo, I appreciate your comment about the putting those two groups together. I kind of did the calculations when I read this last night to do that, and that was helpful for me to try to figure out which way that our citizens had replied on that. The neutral part, you know, I took the neutral part to mean to me that I needed more information before I could make a decision about whether I was pro or con to a certain issue on that.
And it could be that, like, if you never really engage with the parks, you really don't care if there's a dog park or if they're running on the fields, right? Because you just don't visit that part of the city. I mean, neutral could mean like does not apply or indifferent. In addition, you know, as another example to your example of, it could mean that they need more information.
Yeah, especially on and I wasn't specifically the park. I kind of figured we would come in at a split decision on that because I think that's where our city is. But I also looked at it from a standpoint of multi-use buildings, and the question, if you ask me personally, well, are you in favor of multi-use buildings? The key question is, okay, what is it going to look like? How is it going to affect our neighbors? And how is it going to be good for the city? Because it could go either way based on how you ended up with that. But I mean, generally, I kind of looked at that as being the neutral on that. I kind of assumed would be left to individual a plan that came in place, whether you would like it or not on that. So any other comments?
Tom, this is Ryan.
Yes.
You know, the way I read those were essentially that mixed use tends to make people think of at least one floor of residential.
Yes.
And the answer was surprisingly clear to me that people did not want any apartments or condos.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there were places where there was some real consensus, and that was one of them. And so I suspect that the multi-purpose buildings or the mixed-use building was a reaction to the possibility of residential in them. You know, I think if someone said, do you oppose or favor a building that has both offices and retail in it, you probably wouldn't have gotten the same reaction. It was probably the type of use that could have been there. So, I mean, I wasn't terribly surprised. I guess I was a little surprised at you know, I do think there is significant demand for some significant improvements in the city, yet very little support for paying for them. And, you know, I think I understand it, but you can't have it both ways. And so I think if we want to pay for the things that the community is saying it wants, drainage, you know, I guess the most significant drainage issues being the most significant thing that the community wants, is the way I read the survey. They have to be paid for by something, with something. And I don't think that merely waiting for everyone's for the new more expensive housing in the neighborhood to subsidize the rest of our taxes is going to be enough to pay for those things. Although it did look like there was support for a small up to 4% increase in taxes. One thing that surprised me was that no one was for the limited tax incentive for retail. That one got a widespread opposition, which I was surprised to see. And I was somewhat surprised to see the significant opposition to small tax notes. I mean, I don't know how we're going to pay. If you take all of those answers at face value, then we can't pay for anything. So we have to find income somewhere if we want to do the things that the community says that they want.
Well,
Brooke?
I would like to, I take the optimist view on the 4% bonds. If you look at the response on that question, the question is worded, what percentage increase would you support in the city of Rolling Wood's portion of property taxes? So without any campaign at all, you have 37% of people saying none. But the opposite of that, 63 say without any campaign at all. Well, something close to 4% or more. The ones who say without any campaign at all, more than that is 35%. So, to me, I think we take that response in light of the fact that we haven't identified a specific need or plan or communication about why the city should do that kind of bond. So I understand that there's reluctance, but I thought that was surprising in a way. 35% are saying between 4% and greater. So that's not a bad place to start from, in my opinion.
Yeah. The other thing that, Ryan, that I thought was interesting to me in the deal about offering incentives to retail development or whatever type of development we want is I'm not sure people, that most of our residents understand that we have RCDC. And I think that would have made a difference, because I've read that they don't want to pay for incentives, but if we already have the money coming in through our 4B corporation, I think that's probably a different, I think we may have gotten a different answer with that. RCDC is kind of a hard thing to explain to residents, that we have a separate corporation that gets its own sources of money that sole purpose is to promote economic development on that. So I think that I didn't read that quite the same way, because I think that I definitely read that nobody likes to pay taxes. Okay, I'm one of them. But we also have RCDC out there. The other thing that I'm kind of when I read through this, I kind of thinking that there are a few things that the city probably could do to help their own situation in some of these projects. I think they've done a better job of explaining that we have drainage issues to the general public. And of course, we all see it on that. I'm not sure that we've explained to most of our citizens exactly even though we have a needs study, and I just don't think we're going to get a large percentage of our population that will go down and read these reports to determine, like, for instance, City Hall. There's no question in my mind that there are improvements we have to do to City Hall. The extent of them is maybe what we're talking about, but there was a pretty good number of people that did not want to leave it like it was, and I think that I think I think the city would probably be well advised to kind of do an educational program on why we need to do that a little bit different, other than just the need study that we had. Just having a white paper as to what we specifically need to do with that, I think would be useful. A one-page sheet that we would have on there. So, Ashley, I've got you on here twice now. I'm not sure how you're doing that, but I'm glad to see you're able to do that.
I am. I'm here both times.
There we go. I know you do a lot of work. Now I understand how. It's two of you. So,
2 places at one time.
yeah. So, any other comments generally on the survey results, or let's just go through the survey first. That anybody that stood out? I think I went through it last time. The big things that I saw were people like green space. They love our park. They want to keep our single family character of our city, and they're concerned about traffic. And I think there were some other things that I guess we could cover, but that's the issues that I saw from looking at this that were the big ones that stood out to me.
Tom, this is Ryan. One more thing. I think that for me, with respect to the Bee Caves corridor, what I read from the results is that people very much are interested in more retail, that they very much would like. And you can't create retail. The demand has to create retail. So it's not like we just build more a retail space and all of a sudden it's going to be filled with everything that we want it to be filled with. But to the extent that we can plan and manage the best we can to provide the things that people want, it does look like they want both retail in the sense of shops, boutique shops and restaurants, but also, I read as people wanting a better connected retail, and for in some ways for us to figure out, and I think this is a great opportunity for the strike force, is to think of ways that we can better connect our commercial district with our residential area, because they are pretty walled off. And so, I mean, I've thought about, Tom, you and I have both talked about talking with the city of Austin to try to get an easement across the city of Austin Park at the end of Rollingwood Drive where it hits Mopac, to where perhaps we can get an easement, get on Delano Lane and have a perhaps even a walkable or a golf cart access to the Bee Caves corridor. We've talked about the possibility of having some kind of walled off lane or sidewalk on Edge Grove. I personally think Edge Grove is unsafe as it currently exists, especially for kids. Even for teenagers, I wouldn't want walking up and down Edge Grove. But if there were a way for us to really wall off the walking lanes, so that the bike lanes, I guess they are, so that people could be safe walking and biking down there, I think that'd be great. I think it'd be great if we had, and David has brought this up several times at early meetings, some kind of sidewalks in the back of the buildings that we could be connected to. And then, I've also thought about the possibility of connecting as I see the map, there is a city right of way on South Crest that goes from the back of South Crest all the way to Bee Caves Road. I don't know what it looks topographically, but if there were a way to have a trail there or a sidewalk there, that could be great too. So I do think that people want retail and they want to be able to walk to it or ride a bike to it, which we really don't have currently, other than on to the Westlake properties on Rollingwood Drive on the other opposite end. And then clearly people don't want 5-story buildings. I mean, I think that's quite clear that they don't want really tall buildings. They would like us to incentivize retail, to incentivize some kind of connectedness to the retail district, but they don't want 5-story buildings.
And I concur with that. I will say this: probably one of the things that would warrant looking at. I believe that the city actually has Amber's not on the issue. Ashley, I don't think she is. One of the Ashley.
Amber is not on. No, he's not.
I think that the city has 20 feet of right of way that is unpaved on Edge Grove Drive. I'm not sure if it goes all the way. I know it goes from Rollingwood to Timberline. And I'm not sure whether it goes from Timberline to Bee Caves, but I'm pretty sure that we have 20 feet of right of way there that we're not using right now.
Are you talking about along South Crest?
This goes down to Edge Grove, from Edge Grove and Rollingwood.
Okay.
That road was originally designed to be, that right of way was originally designed to be wider than what the roadway is currently. So
Yeah.
we have room to put at least part of that way, a separate bike lane or walk trail, or that would be safer. Edge Grove is not a very safe street to walk down. We all acknowledge that. And if we're going to tie in the walkability, the rideability to the retail that we could have, this is the center of our retail district where Edge Grove is.
Mhm.
That would be something that I think we could, that I will explore that, and let me check the right of way on that. And I'll look into that and make sure that I'm correct, but I think I am. So, and if we did that, and we also have as another asset for mobility, we do have that that property that is behind the finish line all the way to Edge Grove, and I think it's 5 acres. Some of that is in the floodplain. Most of it's in the floodplain. A portion of it's not, but that could be potentially raised out of the floodplain. I think reasonably that we could get that done, and that would be a place to take a golf cart and park, and then walk to the shops that we have. Brooke, I'm sorry.
The thought I've had about that area is if, as part of the incentives for developers along that part of Bee Caves Road, the south part of the north side of Bee Caves Road, from the Shell station to the Goodyear facility, the thought occurred to me to do some kind of raised boardwalk, as opposed to trying to raise the bed of the creek. You know, if you look at Town Lake, they've put a raised boardwalk where they didn't have area along Town Lake to put the hike and bike trail. So part of the hike and bike trail is on a raised platform that extends over the lake itself, or the river itself. And it seems to me that that would potentially be an option to get a walkway or cartway out of the creek, and not as expensive as trying to actually raise or channelize the creek there.
Yeah, to utilize that land that the city has, we would have to channelize the creek, but I'm not proposing that the city do that.
Yeah.
I've always thought that that would be something as a addition that the city could lease to a plan if we had any redevelopment in that area for use as greenbelt that would fit in there, but or may want to leave it just as greenbelt. Rather than raise that, you can do it's a little bit different because we have potential to have so much water come down that creek, and those would be damaged. It'd probably be better to we could do some type of suspension system for a pedestrian bridge there that would not be where you wouldn't have a footing in the creek. It would just be suspended over it. And it might be a sharp rise, but I think it would still be doable to do that. So, but no, I think Edge Grove is a key to making this walkability, as is Delana Lane, to do that. And I do like the idea of being able to get there. I was encouraged by the fact that our survey results showed people did want more restaurants and a pub, somewhere that we could go to and walk to. So I was happy about that. And that again, it's the proof's in the pudding, because they can be a problematic place, or they can be a very very good thing for our city. Hopefully we'll make sure that we do it in the correct manner and make it a neighborhood pub rather than a regional pub type of
Right.
thing. So, so any other comments? And I think that would, Meredith, let me just ask you from a standpoint of, and Ryan made this point, can you kind of give us a high view of what the retail restaurant bar type of situation is in the West Bank from a standpoint of what you view the opportunities for us to be able to attract some of those type of entities into the West Bank?
Sorry, Tom, you're gonna have to rephrase that a little bit. I was changing a diaper.
Oh, yep. I don't want to interfere with that, but I was just trying to get your opinion as to the possibility of us of attracting retail restaurant bar into the West Bank, into the BK's Road corridor.
So okay, I think, hold on a second. I think that the question is, what is the prospect of attracting restaurants and bars into that retail corridor?
Yes.
So I think, our occupancy level is sort of at 100% right now. I don't know of a whole lot of vacancy available. So I think having space available, is kind of the number one first step. And then proving up the demand, I don't really know, if the demand exists, or I haven't really studied that side of it, but certainly if you incentivize, not even incentivize, but if you allow some extent of redevelopment to add space, and typically with new development, those new leases come into play. You don't typically redevelop and put your old tenant back in. You typically will go with a tenant that can pay a higher rent, and those tend to be bars and restaurants. So I think, if there were the possibility to bring new space online, that's, Sway is, I don't want to use really as an example, but those kinds of uses look for new space opportunities. And I don't know if I answered the question or not, but I think that if you want bars and restaurants, there has to be some allocation for new space.
Okay.
Or significantly redeveloped space. And just from like a fresh perspective kind of point of view.
Okay, Brooke.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I didn't mean to have my hand up.
so, I've looked at this from standpoint of we clearly our residents want to be able to walk to a restaurant or bar on BK's Road. I think that's clear. And the walkability portion of that on the transportation that I'll be working on, put this together. Do I have the concurrence of the strike force that not only let's just say we should encourage the safe development of a pedestrian walkway down Edge Grove and across the creek to BK's Road?
I vote yes.
I agree with that, and I would say, and look for as many opportunities as possible to connect the residential areas of Rollingwood to the retail areas of Rollingwood.
So let me kind of think about this for a second. If we had, and I know there was the sidewalks that we've talked about, that would be on the rear of these potential redevelopment that we have along the creek on the north side of BK's Road. If we had that, there's two ways that we could look at doing that. One would be to encourage that as a tool for redevelopment that the city could either require or incentivize through ordinance, or the city should put that in. Now, my personal feeling is that over time, we would have the businesses probably put that in as a means of incentive to say, all right, we're not going to count this against your impervious cover. We're not going to count this against your setback, but just to have that. Now, I haven't heard from the people on Timberline specifically if that would be something that they would be opposed to or not. And Ryan, you're probably closest to that because I think it would be right at your back door. Or
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody wants development closer to their homes. So I
no,
don't
I'm
think
just talking about
anybody
the
would,
sidewalk. The
yeah,
sidewalk.
I don't think anybody would, I think that's the biggest issue that people have, is that they wouldn't want something closer to their homes. I have not found a single person that is comfortable with a walkway on the north side of the creek. And that creek does go into people's private properties on a number of occasions. So even on the south side, that could not go through all, from one end to the other, because it goes through private property, at least not without an easement. But I think David talked early on about envisioning something like a Colorado town. And I really do love the idea of having a walkable space. And look, nobody's going to want to walk on next to Bee Caves Road. But if you could have a walkable pathway on the back of the buildings, again, it doesn't further eat into trees or the creek or the space or the setback between people's homes. I haven't heard any significant resistance to having that. And I like what Brooke circulated, which was how Westlake uses the impervious cover restrictions to essentially ask for things. And so I love the idea of allowing, giving a couple of percentages of impervious cover, or it's the same thing as, it's effectively the same as what you just said, Tom, of not counting it against impervious cover, to have some kind of accessible sidewalk on the back of the buildings. And it would have to be accessible, right? It doesn't do us any good if it's only on the back of the buildings and no one can get to it.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing that makes me excited about the process, because that's the kind of thing that people could really love 20 years from now.
Excellent.
Mhm.
Let's see. I've got somebody's got their hand up. Elizabeth, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Let's see. Can you hear me?
Yes,
There
ma'am.
we go. All right. There was an interesting comment that Ryan made about the easement, the unused easement that connects to South Crest.
Yes.
And so I put a map on my profile page that might be useful for discussion. If you're in speaker view, then it will enlarge it on your screen. And right now I'm on speaker view and you're the speaker and not me. So I don't know how to change that. Can you see the map, or can you make me?
I can see the map. I'm familiar with that section. I believe that section was the extension of South Crest that would have gone to BK's Road, but it's down. I believe most of that is in the creek.
Well, I know the area a little bit, and I'm sure there are plenty of topographical challenges there.
Yeah.
But it really does open up the neighborhood to a number of commercial properties without having to drive on Bee Caves Road. Anyway, apparently the speaker view and the large map is not working. I was just hoping that might be a little bit helpful.
I have no idea how to do that, Elizabeth.
Uh-huh.
Elizabeth, I can see it, and I can, and it is helpful. I mean, if you just blow up the screen as I did on my screen, you can see what you've done there.
Yeah, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a button that says View, and you can select the speaker view or the gallery view. And the speaker view will give you a large picture of the speaker, or I guess maybe it doesn't work since I've got a photograph and it's not a video. So,
Okay.
but my
Well,
face is not the map, so I guess.
It's working on my screen, Elizabeth.
Okay, okay.
Elizabeth, if you would like, if you will send that to Ashley, she will send it out to everybody.
Okay, okay, happy to do that.
Great. David, you've
But
got
like,
your,
but like you said, the topography there might just be impossible, and the neighbors on South Crest might not appreciate it. I don't know.
well, the only issue that I have ever thought about on that is that we're going to have to provide some type of interim parking area because some people are going to drive down to that area and park and then walk over if they can, so they don't have to get on BK's Road. Now that's, it's not that far from our parking lot at the city park. So, that may not be an issue, but that's something that I think we ought to, I don't want to have people on South Crest having an issue about people parking on South Crest to walk over, but we potentially have a ability to, I mean, we can control parking if we need to. David, I think you got your hand up. I don't know.
I do.
Oh,
Thank you. Yeah, I do. And to kind of piggyback on what Elizabeth was saying, I think South Crest actually terminates kind of on the east side of Wally's property of the
Yeah.
Palisades. Makes it in there. I want to echo some of the things that Tom, both you and Ryan have talked about. And, in terms of mobility, in terms of, in particular, walking and biking mobility, I see, some improvements to Edgegrove really as kind of the linchpin to getting a lot done, because, as it stands right now, I have walked along, I've, and I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, like dropping my car off at the Chevron to get a little bit of work or stuff. There's times when I've either, walked home, and, it is, I don't feel safe walking along Edgegrove just with traffic and whatnot. But I think if there's some ways we can, work on Edgegrove to improve accessibility, that becomes then a linchpin for lateral movements, whether it's improved pedestrian access, on the traditional front side of businesses, or, like Ryan and I have others have talked about, kind of the idea of kind of like a boardwalk or something along the back side of those businesses, particularly if you're looking at a bar type, setup. And I think of like, the way Sway is set up. And, I know some folks involved with the group that built Sway. I've talked to them about it, and, get kind of the way it's oriented where you can kind of walk and access it from the back, also to cut down on some of the BK's Road and gain some of the aesthetics of some of the trees and whatnot on the backside. But then the other thing, and Ryan, you and I have talked about this before, and, I would like, and I think Edgegrove, since it's kind of really kind of in almost the middle of that stretch of bee caves, if there's also a way, and I realize that TxDOT plays a part in this too, if there's a way that we could really work on accessibility issues for biking, for walking, to get across Bee Caves Road and take advantage of some of the things over at Mira Vista, and on to the west. I think that would be a benefit both to our community in terms of access for hiking, biking, etc., but also for the businesses over there to feel kind of more connected from a pedestrian standpoint. Because I mean, I know that there's times when, my kids have, talked about, hey, we want to ride our bikes and go get ice cream at Amy's, and I've been like, guys, that's a kind of tough intersection there. But I think kind of, since we are doing a comprehensive plan, since this is kind of a vision statement, I mean, I'd like to, take a look at improving Edge Grove, but then also improving Edge Grove and making a more accessible, more pedestrian bike friendly crossing there to get from one side of Bee Caves to the other. Because right now it is, even with, even with, the intersection lights and stuff, it's like playing Frogger trying to get across there as a pedestrian or on a bike. And, also it's not lost on me that from a traffic standpoint, if we have improved pedestrian and bike crossing, it should also hopefully help slow down traffic a little bit through there.
So let me make a supposition on this. So when the remainder of Bee Cave Road is improved by TxDOT, there's going to be sidewalks that'll go down both sides of Bee Caves all the way to Rollingwood Drive. If I were TxDOT and in the city, and I asked for a elevated pedestrian bike system that would go across above Bee Caves, which it brings its own set of problems. I understand that. I would suggest that the place that ought to be is Rollingwood Drive, because then our kids can ride their bike to school.
School, yeah.
Then they would, if they wanted to go down to, since assuming that this is all, when this is done, there'll be sidewalks on both sides of Bee Caves that they could then go down to any of the commercial areas, ride from there. It's kind of a long way. We're not talking about one at Edge Grove, but we're talking about one that would be across Bee Caves Road somewhere. But I would think that Rollingwood Drive would probably be the place that you could sell that. There, you're not dealing with elevational issues that would affect, I don't think it would affect any residences. Might, but I don't think it would. And that would enable you kind of kill two birds with one stone. You could connect the two commercial districts up at Westwood and the McDonald's shopping center, and you'd have a way to get across Bee Caves Road that would be a lot safer on that. But that's just, whether TxDOT would even consider that. It's not an easy thing to build, but they kind of look at doing that sometimes. So that would be, to me, that would be the place to do that. They refer to that little island in the middle of Bee Caves Road at Edge Grove, David. You know this because you've dealt with TxDOT too much, as a pedestrian refuge island.
Yes.
Mhm.
And which is a incredible term when you think about it.
That is where you duck and cover when you don't have enough time to get all the way across.
Yeah. So and if you're riding a bike or trying to walk your bike across, just barely enough room to hang it in there without getting in the roadway.
Yeah.
So, that's, but doing that makes a difference on it. Ryan?
Yeah, I was going to just weigh in and say I think I actually preferred David's approach of something over around Edge Grove, just because I don't necessarily want us to spend all our money connecting us to Westlake. I want us to spend our money connecting us to our businesses, and no one is gonna walk all the way over to all the way down Rollingwood Drive to Bee Caves in order to go to Trader Joe's. It's just too long of a walk. The other thing is you mentioned terrain, and I've done enough research to get me in trouble. But it appears that a change in elevation is actually beneficial for a pedestrian crosswalk because it means much fewer steps and no elevators to get up to it. So if you can find a place, and I don't know if there is one, but if you can find a place where the terrain is naturally elevated on both sides of a road, that is a good place for an elevated walkway rather than a bad place.
Excellent. Brooke, I believe you have your hand up.
I was just saying, let's convince I know the name is escaping me. Las Colinas, not Las Colinas, the community just outside of Rollingwood next to the McDonald's.
Las Lomas.
Las Lomas. Let's convince Las Lomas to pressure TxDOT at Rollingwood Drive and Bee Caves Road for the crosswalk.
I think, Tom, there's no reason we can't show. I think there should be pedestrian improvements at both of those locations for reasons that we're all talking about here. And, I hear what you're saying in terms of if we had some sort of, dedicated, elevated, overwalk, which I would rather, if we're gonna do an elevated one, I want it to look like the bridge, the pedestrian bridge over Town Lake, and I want TxDOT to pay for it, and not like some of the ones that I used to see where I spent part of my childhood in Southern California with the chain link around it. I think both places should really be improved from a really having dedicated and well identified, but also protected bike and pedestrian crossings, because they are the crosswalk there at Rollingwood Drive and Bee Caves is certainly used a lot, and I think there's some improvements going on there that are so that reflect that. But I think Ryan and I would love to be able to ride my bike or walk across there and cross over it along Edge Grove and go take advantage of some of the stuff that's on the other side of really of this part of our town, but on the other side of Bee Caves.
Yeah. And I think that's I think that's exactly what we probably should be doing on that.
And also, Tom, from an action forcing mechanism, it remains to be seen how much more environmental planning TxDOT is going to need to do for those improvements. I know they've done some. It's a little bit, their NEPA work's a little bit stale. They may have to do some of it, but from an action forcing mechanism, I think to the extent as a vision document, we talk about improvements at both locations. It's something that when the city writes comments to TxDOT, we say, hey, look, here's our planning document. You need to pay attention to what we have in there.
Excellent. Brooke, did you have your hand up?
Well, I was just, this is minor, but the more I think about Rollingwood Drive, where it crosses Bee Caves Road, there are also kids in the city of Austin along Ridgewood and that area that are going to the school across Bee Caves Road as well. So we should enlist City of Austin on that too.
Excellent, thank you. Let me kind of switch subjects here. I think that we are all in agreement that the connectivity of Edge Grove is something that we want to encourage for a pedestrian bike approach. So let's look at the Lana Lane, because I was kind of surprised at the high percentage of negativity on that from a standpoint of whether we were going to have any improvements on that lane. And I understand there's always the issue of, are we encouraging more traffic, foot traffic coming through. You know, there is a path there now. The city of Austin's done some improvements to at least use that. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that Delana Lane is still listed as a roadway by the city of Austin, even though they've closed it on that. So, but I'd like any feedback that we can get on that from the standpoint of whether Delana Lane should have, what we should do with Delana Lane and connecting that to Rollingwood Drive. Phil, I'm sorry. Phil?
Yeah, I've been back on Delana Lane. I used to take the dogs back there a lot. There's a few things that are possibly somewhat concerning that I think maybe should be addressed on Delana Lane. One is right now it is, for lack of a better term, just completely coyote infested. I went down there just a couple of times, a couple of weeks ago, and the coyotes are, at least right now, seeming to be very used to humans. They're not at all shy. One of them basically charged us. So that's one concern. There's also a couple of, it looks like they're abandoned homeless camps that are deep in the woods on the other side of Delana Lane. If you just kind of walk along Delana Lane, there's about 1.5 foot stone wall, and you can see certain breaks and certain paths that are in that. And if you walk back to them, you will almost always find a clearing where someone has been camping out there or something like that. So maybe all of that would be mitigated with more traffic and more policing, that type of thing. The other issue I would see is possibly just having a ingress and egress for people, either the lots that are on Rollingwood Drive might be exposed, and some of the ones on Timberline might be exposed to people coming in and using that as a way to come in, hit a house that backs up to that, and then get back out. So once again, with more traffic, that might be addressed, but those are my main observations about that. The other thing is when it rains, it becomes impassable because there's a little bridge there that completely floods over. So anyway, that's all I got.
Thank you, Phil. And yeah, just so you know, that area down there has been a difficult area to police. Rollingwood does have an interlocal agreement with the city of Austin that allows us to police that area, even the areas in the city of Austin. And the police do routinely go through there and patrol it. And I know there is some issues there. And I didn't know that we had a homeless camp there. I know we had one a year or so ago. There was somebody there, but they were asked to leave and did. So I mean, those are issues that we have to deal with, and it's not inconsequential that if we're affecting those homeowners down on that have lots that go from Rollingwood Drive down to Delana Lane, they certainly have a valid point to be made on that. And if we can't make it so it's safe for them and safe for everybody else, then I don't know how that would be beneficial to our city on that. Now, that roadway is used for, like in ACL, when people park in the parking garage, they take that path down to Rollingwood Drive and hence over to ACL. It's unlit, and it's kind of a interesting time on that. The coyotes are going to be, Rollingwood has had in the past active trapping programs for coyotes. We usually can catch one out of a pack, and then they figure out that they don't want to go to that. They figure out what the trap looks like, and that's it. All we get out of there. That's a problem everywhere in our urban area, all over Austin area on that with coyotes. The coyotes actually belong to the state. Rollingwood has to get the state involved for it. And we have to have a licensed trapper to come in and take them out. But they're smart critters and they're hard to trap. So, and the traps have to be humane traps. They're not kill traps. They're just, and they can't, they have to be trapped alive on that. So.
Hey, Tom,
Yes, sir.
just on that issue, I'm also on the Austin Travis County Animal Advisory Commission. We deal with coyote issues a lot. I do agree with Phil that it is coyote infested. Every time I walk on there, you can see coyote scat just about every 20 feet. Coyotes generally generally do not have significant conflicts with people. If one charged, it was probably trying to protect its young, or they do an activity that's called shepherding. I think basically they will walk you out of their territory. They walk behind you to kind of to push you out of their territory. I think there's been one coyote caused death in the history of North America or something like that. I mean, it's incredibly small. And the coyotes that do cause significant damage are the coyotes that are much bigger than the ones here. You don't want to hire the state to do coyote trapping. It is not a humane trap. It is a steel leg trap. It locks onto their legs. They will either gnaw off their own leg, or they'll be killed by another animal. It's not a good thing. It also will trap pets. So if somebody's dog gets loose, they catch a lot of cats. You don't want that. In fact, the city of Austin has terminated its relationship with the state entity that traps coyotes. And the last thing is it just doesn't work, as you mentioned, because what coyotes do, just like every other animal, is they look for places where they can have enough food and raise their young and be protected. And so if you kill one, another one's going to come in because it has the resources. Like all other animals, they simply go where the resources are. And so it doesn't do any good to kill one. I just happen to know a decent amount on that subject, so I figured I would chime in.
We had we don't do it now. Just in the past, we've asked the state to come in and do it. We didn't pay them; they just came in and did it. I think the phrase I used was, "Governor, your coyotes are loose. Can you come round them up?" And of course, that didn't. They did come in for a little while, but it was for a very short while, and it had no impact whatsoever on the population. Brooke?
No, sorry.
No. So that was Phil. I have no idea how to. That's beyond my pay grade to figure out how to deal with them. As far as I know, the best way to get rid of animal control like that is control the food source. And my guess is that a lot of those coyotes are visiting over in Zilker Park at night to feed on the trash cans and all the refuge is left over there.
Well, I imagine they're doing that. I imagine they're also hitting the dumpsters behind like Chinatown and stuff like that. And I do think that I know there were a couple of absolutely active homeless camps. There's one guy that had a mountain bike that would kind of come in and out over there that you would see come and go. I haven't seen that mountain bike is gone now. So I imagine got him out. But just wanted to bring that up. And when I say they got charged, I was walking my dog back there. I allowed the dog off the leash the one time, and literally the coyote came and hit the dog. So that's all. I was just worried that if we make it for small children or something like that, there may be an issue, but Ryan's saying that probably not. So that'd be great.
Well, I do agree that, I mean, I would put up signs. I mean, when I walked through there, I walked through with my 4-year-old and 6-year-old, and I kept my 4-year-old close, knowing because they're not trying to be aggressive. But the fact of the matter is, if you stumble on one of them near their 3 or 4 babies, they're going to push you out, and they're going to do whatever it takes to push you out. So,
well, I did see one that was probably, I would guess, somewhere in the neighborhood 45 to 50 pounds.
It's a big one.
There's a big coyote back there.
Well, the basic question is on Delana Lane as to how that would tie into what we would be talking about on connectivity to our systems on that. And I think that's going to require quite a bit of work from the city standpoint to how they develop that from a standpoint of making sure that we don't have any adverse effect on our neighbors in that area, because I think that's appropriate. Now, I will say this, we have in the past been offered help financially from the Rollingwood Town Center that would help to make that trail, that connectivity there a lot safer. And I know several of the council members have worked on approaching that, but the basic question in my mind is to make sure that we don't have some adverse effect on that whole neighborhood down there. And I can't help you with the coyotes. I don't know how to do that. I guess Rick Perry, when he was jogging, figured out how to resolve a coyote. I'm not hopeful that that's what we'll do, because I don't think that was a very good way to do it. Anyway, let's see if I got anything else.
Tom, one last point on that while you're looking at the agenda. I do think it's kind of our job to float out these ideas in the sense of tell our community, you asked for connectedness. Here are the places that we see possibilities. And if the community doesn't like that idea, we take it off the plan. But they can't even consider it, or they're not going to consider it unless we put it out there as a possible place to be connected. And of course, it's absolutely true that the more connected we become, the more we are potentially drawing people to come the opposite direction that we may not want. And so maybe we all end up deciding Edgeboro is the only place we want to be connected, but I feel like we should at least throw it out there for discussion.
Elizabeth, you have your hand up.
Well, I do. And I just wondered if we were going to have very much discussion about Ryan's outline proposal for the I'm sorry, just a proposal for the comprehensive plan.
Yes, on BK's.
And I don't know if I've missed it or we just haven't gotten to it yet.
We have not gotten to it, and I would anticipate we will not. In fact, since we're at the end of our time, we'll take that up at the next session we have, which will be next Monday. Elizabeth.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. There were some things I was going to mention, but I will save it for next time.
Thank you. And Elizabeth, and if y'all would like to send any comments in before the meeting, if you'll send them to Ashley, she'll distribute them. So we'll have them before that, if that would be better.
Thank you. I'll do that. And I will. I always forget until it's too late, but I will send some photos and comments beforehand next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. If I'm going to go ahead and table item 4 till next Monday, and item 5 will be our next Monday meeting, if that's okay. Okay, and we'll continue with the BK's Road. And I do thank everybody, and I think Patty did an excellent job, and I was very pleased with what she did on that. And I appreciate the feedback we got from everybody. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Got a motion, we have a second, and without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. I think we got through this one without the technical difficulties.
There we go.
We
Okay,
did.
very good.
Thank y'all very much.
And all I can say is, when it comes to technical issues like that, I have nothing to do with them one way or the other.
No, I know you are innocent, Tom.
Thank you all very much. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.